All right, so our speaker today is Damien Riehl. He is the VP of Litigation Workflow and Analytics Content at Fastcase, and he is also a member of the Minnesota Governor's Council on Connected and Automated Vehicles. So we're delighted to have you here today, and we'll let you go ahead and get started.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here. Mostly, first to be able to talk about autonomous vehicles, that's fun. But mostly I like wearing a tie and coat. And I thought, what better time? I used to work at the Minnesota Court of Appeals. So I was in the hallowed halls of the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court for a while. And I wore a coat and tie every day. So I figured pandemic or not, I'm going to be wearing a coat and tie for this meeting as well. So the focus of this is to be able to talk about autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles. Those two are connected in that autonomous vehicles is what everyone is worried and thinking about, but connected vehicles are as interesting as autonomous vehicles as well. So I'll be talking about both connected and autonomous vehicles. A bit more about my background. After working at the Minnesota Court of Appeals and for others, I worked for Robbins Kaplan for a while, and I saw Bill Maddox is in the audience, a partner with Robbins for a long time. So welcome to all my former Robbins folks, as well as others who are attending. Autonomous vehicles look great. You can see that they look really sexy, like the Tesla X. They look, fun like an Uber, or they look really dorky, like the Waymo prototype. And you can see here that it looks a lot different in a fully autonomous vehicle than with others. There's no steering wheel. There's minimal, brakes in case things go wrong. And lots of companies are chasing these things. So you can see all of these companies are chasing some sort of automation. And these are really focusing on the level 5 automation that is fully automated. But every company is really focusing on connected vehicles. That is, vehicles that connect with the infrastructure, connect with each other, connect in some way. Of course, if you listen to the Pied Piper of autonomous vehicles, Elon Musk, he says what we have at Tesla is going to blow people's minds. It's going to come sooner than you think. That was, of course, 2016. And 7 years ago, or I guess 6 years ago, he said, within 2 years, you're going to be able to summon your car from across the country. He's not one for understatement. Fast forward to 2021, last year, and he said, actually, this full self-driving beta is not great, in my opinion, but Autopilot, they're rallying to improve things. So it's a long stretch from summon your vehicle by 2018 to 3 years after he predicted it was going to happen, that it's actually not great. You shouldn't use it. Right now, does it make sense for someone to do full self-driving subscription? It's debatable. So at any rate, I think this switch from 2016 Elon Musk to 2021 Elon Musk really indicates the optimism that was in 2016 with the pessimism that is in 2021. And there's an idea of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where the less you know about a problem, the more expert you think you are at it. But then the more you know about the problem, the more you realize you don't know, and then the less certain you are with the outcome. And I think that's certainly true for Elon Musk. And I think it's also true for the industry as a whole. The industry as a whole is grappling with how hard the problem of self-driving cars is. So when you think about self-driving cars, people think in a binary term, that this is either self-driving or it's not. But really, it's not binary. It's really a level of automation. So what is the level of automation we're talking about? Today, from all the way from zero, from no automation, that's manual driving, all the way to full automation is number 5. We're today, between levels 0 through 4 in most instances. And so when you think about, how do these things work? Of course, you have LiDAR for many of them, or optical cameras for the Tesla system to be able to see what's going on around you, to be able to avoid objects like cars, that sort of thing. And this is a fusion of the LiDAR systems that Waymo and others use, that they essentially create a model of the world around the car to be able to avoid objects and that sort of thing. So today we're levels 0 through 4, and level 0, of course, the human is fully responsible, and level 4, the human is unnecessary. You can have it, but you don't need to. And level 5, of course, this is if full automation, that the level 5 vehicle would be able to drive everywhere that a human driver can drive, that is on a country road that doesn't have any pavement, and that there doesn't even need to be a human in the car. So at any rate, so we are a long way from level 5, and I've spoken with many people in the industry, they question whether we will ever reach level 5. I think we will someday reach level 5, but whether it will be in our lifetimes or not is a big question. If you ask Elon Musk, he will think maybe differently. So when you think about how are we going to deploy autonomous vehicles or quasi-autonomous vehicles, there is an argument to be made that we should jump right to level 5 because levels 1 through 4 are more difficult. So when you think about what's in it for the world, for federal regulators, the regulators are saying that fully self-driving cars, this is again 2016 during the height of optimism for autonomous vehicles, they said that fully self-driving cars may prove to be the greatest personal revolution since the personal automobile. They said that, we're really excited about it, mostly because of safety, because 35,000 people die in 1 year alone, and 94% of those are because human error. So if you get rid of the human control, therefore you get rid of the error, and you get rid of 94% of 35,000, which is a good chunk of humans that will not die. So the regulators, again, this is in 2016 from NHTSA and from the Department of Transportation, say that one of the benefits is that a machine will continue to learn about its environment and will continue to deploy that learning across the entire fleet of vehicles. At least that's the hope. And then you'll be able to learn about the vehicle infrastructure and vehicle-to-vehicle sensors. It'll also be able to conserve energy. The idea is that you'll have ride sharing, which will have fewer cars on the road, slower driving, and even more importantly, that you'll have drafting. That is, you'll be able to, autonomous vehicle or connected vehicle has a much faster reaction time than the other vehicle. Therefore, they can essentially tailgate each other more closely. And in that way, it'll both save gas, that is the save energy. It'll also allow more cars on the road at a given time if they're tailgating each other. Therefore, you can essentially add more capacity, more vehicles on the road without laying another block of concrete. Of course, the disabled, the elderly, low income, and children, if autonomous vehicles are deployed as robo-taxis, they will be able to, say, a blind person be able to more easily hail a taxi for less expense than they would with an Uber or otherwise. And as I said earlier, you can increase capacity without increasing any more concrete. So, of course, the regulators are saying we are ambitious, that we want to accelerate the human automated vehicles, highly automated vehicles. And today it's going to provide safety, and then it's going to be even better in the future. So let's full speed ahead. Let's go forward with this thing, and let's make sure that we do best practices that maybe guide a little bit manufacturers, but mostly let's get them out the road. The idea is that let's get them on the road first, and we'll kind of regulate on the back end. That was what they said in 2016. So that was AV plan number 1. AV plan number 2 was September of 2017. Again, full speed ahead, but they changed some things from the Obama era, 2016, to the Trump era. So they kept a lot of the things, system safety and all the things that we have lines here. They got rid of privacy and ethical considerations during the Trump administration. And they added these operational design domains and other validation methods in 2017. Most importantly, the guidance from NHTSA and the Department of Transportation saying that, hey, states, don't codify anything into state statutes. Let us, as the feds, regulate this thing so that we don't have federal-state conflicts. And that is something, as I'm going to show you in a bit later, continues to be both the regulatory federal stance, that is from NHTSA and the Federal Department of Transportation, as well as Congress. Congress has a statute, a bill, rather, that is going through the process to be able to try to have federal jurisdictional over the federalism over the states. Fast forward to 2018, when the feds released AV Plan 3, largely unchanged. In 2020, they had AV Plan number 4, again, largely unchanged. Generally, they said, again, automated vehicles are going to be great for humanity. We're going to support AV growth, and we're going to invest in some things for AV. Largely, they keep saying, let's go ahead and make sure that we get these robot cars on the roads as fast as we can, because humans will be saved. So September of 2017, Congress said, hey, we probably shouldn't just leave it to the NHTSAs of the world. We should probably provide a federal, not just federal regulation, but a federal statute saying what the metes and bounds of the regulatory environment for self-driving and connected vehicles. So the Self-Drive Act was introduced in September of 2017. And they said, we're going to introduce some rules, performance standards. Companies are going to need to have privacy plans on how they collect and store data, and they want to be able to be sure that the privacy is permitted. And then The Senate, it passed the House. The Senate was trying to reconcile a number of differences, but sadly, they never did reconcile it in 2017. And so we are here in 2021, 2022. This past Congress in 2021 that began, they will again go through the self-driving car reform for the Self-Drive Act. But of course, it is not yet passed, and query whether this Congress will be able to pass it anytime soon. This is one of the co-sponsors of the bill, saying that we have to have a national framework because we don't want to have a 50-state patchwork of states doing their own thing. That is, you can imagine the difficulty if I'm Tesla or I'm Waymo, and my car gets to the edge of the border and goes across the state border, and now all of a sudden I have to enact new rules now that I cross the state border. So of course, having a federal regulation, not just for Tesla cars, but more importantly for trucks, that is commercial vehicles that need to go from coast to coast with trucks. You can imagine the regulatory difficulty it would be to be able to go through and do a 50-state survey for such things. All right. Speaking of trucks, that is the biggest use case to be able to have a truck go from coast to coast without a human in it, because one of the biggest costs of trucking is the humans. So if you get rid of the humans, and some have argued that the humans are about 80% of the costs for trucking. So if you get rid of that 80% cost, that is a large profit margin that you could build into them. So that's thing number one. You can increase the profits. Thing number two is that you can have a bunch of self-driving trucks that can platoon behind each other, or perhaps you have the first truck is a human, and then you have a bunch of autonomous vehicles trailing the human behind them. That is essentially tailgating and platooning in that way. So then you have one driver for maybe 5 different platooned vehicles behind them. Again, a large cost savings. So the autonomous vehicle industry is really bully on the trucking. And of course, there's no shortage of, if you read the headlines, there's lots of autopilot accidents from Tesla, especially saying that there are ways to be able to drive without being on the driver's seat, and there's lots of crashes. Here's an example of a video of what happened. Consumer Reports did a study saying we can put a weight on the steering wheel to make Tesla think that I'm actually somebody in the car. But here you can see on the test track that nobody's in the driver's seat. So you can do it fully autonomously. So this is kind of a cat and mouse game where the people try to trick the Teslas, and then the Teslas come back and fix it. At any rate, there is some more work to be done to be able to ensure that there's actually humans paying attention to the things that are going on. As we move forward. All right. So GM, again, in the height of excitement about autonomous vehicles, said we are going to have a $500 million joint venture with Lyft to develop these self-driving cars. And then that was in January 2016. Fast forward to 2018, and GM left the Lyft board, and then later they said there is a dwindled partnership between GM and Lyft. So anyway, people might be familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, where you have the trough of disillusionment, and we are certainly right now in the trough of disillusionment, both with GM as well as with Uber's partnership with Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon. And they said in 2016 we were going to have our driverless future, Uber said, and of course the Uber sold its Robocar unit in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. And of course there's all sorts of ways that Carnegie Mellon is still trying to get into the game by having other partnerships with other companies. Back in October 2015, Tesla first deployed what they called Autopilot, an unfortunately named thing because as you can see, it's only level 2 or level 3, and under level 2 or level 3, humans definitely need to be involved. Otherwise, they may well die. So it's pretty good incentive. So the fact that it's actually called Autopilot is unfortunate. And full self-driving, that's another unfortunate name that maybe will come back to bite Elon Musk and Tesla, as far as full self-driving and Autopilot, when it is not fully self-driving, nor is it an autopilot. At any rate, there's lots of pounding of chess to demonstrate how good Tesla is at something that it's not really great at. But they're arguably better than anybody else in the industry. Toyota's in the game, of course. They have pedestrian detection, pre-collision systems. They provide brakes automatically. And of course, this is along the lines of level 2 or so, maybe 1 and 2, to be able to help things out. And Super Cruise on GM side in 2017. So again, these are connected features, even though they're not fully autonomous self-driving features. Google and Waymo is invested a lot in this, and of course, the parent company of both is Alphabet. So in 2017, they did level 4 in Arizona. That is, they did not even have a safety driver in the seat. That was back in 2017. And then in 2021, California has modified its regulations so that Waymo has also deployed the level 4 drivers in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. So of course, the biggest question is, boy, do I want to be in San Francisco and Arizona because we have these robocars running around killing people, maybe. And of course, you think about, okay, what are we doing today? Right? What kind of safety do we have with people texting, or people driving, or people turning around and yelling at their kids? Right? There's lots of weak links that are humans. And when I was working in tech support, often they would talk about PEPCAP, that the problem exists between the keyboard and the chair. And here you can say that the problem exists between the car seat and the steering wheel. So if you get rid of that human, then you might be able to get rid of a lot of deaths. So you can see here that this is from 2016, that 2015. Had a lot of increase in traffic deaths, which reverses a trend of decreasing over the years. So you can see from 1970 until the late 2010s, there was a large decrease in the number of deaths, both number of deaths as a human, regular statistics, as well as the percentage of deaths normalized across the population. So it's a huge decrease up through 2015, when you can see there's an increase again. And it's no surprise that one of the reasons for that 2010 through 2020 increase is because of texting and email being behind the wheel. Of course, smartphones became very populous. And so you can see here that, texting, 61% of people said that, and this is in 2017, said that they texted. I'm sure that the number is much higher now. But you can imagine browsing the internet, using social media, all of these things again, these are 2017 numbers. You can imagine that they're a lot higher now. In addition, Minnesota counts what the cause of accidents are. So you can see here that human factors are at the top, and then the other two are vehicular factors and miscellaneous factors. You can see by far, the vehicular factors is only 4%, miscellaneous factors are only 6%. So 90% of the factors in Minnesota are human factors. That is, the driver was distracted or wasn't paying attention, didn't yield the right of way, followed too closely. That accounts for the vast majority. You can see that 20 plus 18, that's 40, 50, 60% of these are just those three areas. And each of these things, of course, computers don't get distracted. Computers don't yield the right, fail to yield the right of way usually. And of course, connected vehicles can follow pretty closely without getting in collisions. So when you think about, this is these human factors versus vehicular factors, that is a pretty strong argument that, we should try to solve this human problem. In the 1979, this is a federal study, showed the causes of collisions. And you can see that usually there's a Venn diagram of sometimes the driver and the roadway were at fault, sometimes the driver and the vehicle were at fault, sometimes all three were at fault, and sometimes it was an extraneous factor outside of this. So this is actually drawn to scale, where in 1979, it's mostly driver, but some roadway and vehicle. But you can see, fast forward to 2005, the same study by the feds showed that environment and vehicle were solving a lot of those problems. That is, the roadways are getting safer, the vehicles are getting safer, but what's not getting safer is the humans. So you can understand why NHTSA and the federal regulators are saying, okay, we need to solve this driver problem because we're solving the other problems. We have to change the meat in the seat, as they say. Here's another graph showing the causes in a different fashion. So the cause of, in 2015, critical reason for crashes, you can see that drivers are the vast majority. Here's a pie graph showing the same thing of the NHTSA study. So when you think about, the driving deaths per miles driven, which is, that's probably a pretty good indication, there's still far fewer for autonomous vehicles than there are regular humans. And that's today. Of course, how many more in 2025 will there be? So the feds, after the first few people died in the Tesla, one-off accidents, the NHTSA released a statement saying no one incident, that is no one death or otherwise, is going to deter us from improving safety, statistically, through these life-saving technologies. And so they said, we as the federal regulators will ensure that the manufacturers share their data, that is Tesla shares with Waymo and otherwise, and be able to see the edge cases that be shown. For those who aren't familiar with the term edge case, that is you have the vast majority of things that happen, and then the weird things that happen are edge cases. For example, Tesla has talked about, they can build a lot of things in their model, but what they didn't build into their model is something they saw in the real world, and that is an edge case of what does a truck look like when it's flipped over on its side? You don't think about looking at the bottom of a truck, but of course a Tesla has to be able to see the bottom of a truck as it's flipped over on its side to be able to avoid that. So anyway, those are the kind of edge cases that the federal regulators are saying, okay, we need to be able to have Tesla show that image of a truck flipped over on its side to be able to give that to Waymo, so that Waymo can improve their systems, and give that to all the other car manufacturers to ensure that they're able to see the car on its side. So anyway, so this kind of idea of being able to share data is pretty important. And then when you think about that, okay, that one being able to see a car flipped over or a truck on its side, now every car company in the fleet is able to benefit from that. And think about, which, that's now forevermore, every car that goes out is going to know what a truck on its side looks like. Compare that with every 16-year-old driver that makes the same mistakes that every 16-year-old driver has made since time immemorial, right? And every year you have a new crop of 16-year-olds that make really awful mistakes. So which is the better system? The one that makes mistakes every year in time immemorial, or the one that learns from its mistakes, not just from that one car, but the entire car across all the fleets, across all of the companies? So when you have the left, right, you have drinking and driving, you have texting and driving, you have inattentive driving. Of course, the promise of autonomous vehicles is the reason that so many companies and the regulators are chasing such things, that you are able to have 360-degree vision, not just forward-looking vision, but you can have 360-degree vision at all times and never get tired and never get, never stray from the task at hand. Also, human reaction time is about 1.5 seconds. That's not going to change because human evolution takes a long time, but milliseconds in the cars. And so you can imagine as Moore's law can change that milliseconds to fractions of milliseconds. Of course, that the reaction time is also put one up for the machines. Also, if you're a manufacturer, you're going to err on the side of safety. You're going to want to be able to build the systems that they're going to go under the speed limit. For example, an officer, there's a story about an officer pulling over a Waymo vehicle because it was going 10 miles an hour under the speed limit. And of course, there's a YouTube video here where there's a car that errs on the side of caution, where it avoids a car pulling out, and it was going far slower than maybe a human driver would have gone. So if you listen to people who prognosticate about such thing, they estimate that about 90% of our crashes will be reduced if we have an autonomous vehicle. And then if you think about how many gallons of fuel will be saved, if you have tailgating and platooning, and then how much productivity, if I as a user am able to essentially put my car into level 4 or level 5, and I can actually get work done on the way my commute to and from a particular place, of course, then that increases my productivity, which gives me a boost in the economy. So anyway, so those are all the great promise of our eventual level 4, level 5 future. Of course, there are speed bumps. And as anyone who is attending this session knows, who is a lawyer, some of those speed bumps relate to the laws. And that is particularly legal liability for autonomous vehicles and policymakers regulating and otherwise writing statutes to be able to regulate what level 4, level 5, or others can do. So we're going to focus on these top two, even though the other two, the ideas of will I as a consumer accept this? Will it be fit within my budget? Is there infrastructure to support it? And is there the tech that's going to be there? The tech part is really a hard problem, but we won't talk about that as much today. We're going to focus on the numbers 1 and number 2. So on the regulatory side, I've already said that the feds are saying we don't really need to to regulate because really there's an argument that under the Geneva Convention that you're able to control your vehicles. But there's an idea that if you do not regulate a thing, what isn't prohibited is permitted. And of course, that's on the federal side, they're saying we're even permitting it. We're providing explicit approval of that. So query whether a state could even prohibit such things. And then they probably could, but it's not been tested yet. So on the federal side, again, they said, we must rapidly put this thing out. And of course, they will continue to move quickly. And the idea, they're following the same playbook as they did with airbags. The idea with airbags, when those were deployed, I think in the 80s or 90s, is that they said, hey, let's put these things on the road as quickly as possible because they save lives. And the more months and years we wait to deploy them, the more people will die in the interim until they actually go out. So let's deploy the airbags right away, and then we'll regulate on the back end. That is, we'll wait a bit before we figure out what standards need to be implemented with the airbags. So that's what they did in the 80s and 90s. And they're saying the same thing should happen for autonomous vehicles. Let's go ahead and deploy these connected features, and then we'll figure out on the back end what to do before we implement those safety standards. One important difference between the airbags, where if there is a recall to airbags, you can imagine it can take years to try to update the airbags to make sure that they're safer. Of course, the autonomous vehicles are largely software-based, not hardware-based. So it might take years to do airbags, but updating software can take minutes. And by the way, you don't even need to go into a shop to do that. You can just do an over-the-air update to your car to be able to have better software. So according to the regulators, say, if we wait for the perfection, that is nobody to die, we're going to wait for a very, very long time. And then, while we wait, the humans are going to kill people all over the place. So how many lives in the interim are we going to lose while we're waiting for perfect? So the idea is that we're going to be nimble in our approach, and we're going to provide certainty to manufacturers and developers to continue advancing the technology, to give the financial incentive to be able to make the things better, faster, stronger, et cetera. So 2021, that is June of last year, NHTSA issued a standing general order saying that if you are a manufacturer or operator of a level 2, 3, 4, 5 vehicle, you have to report the crashes for level 2, that is ADAS systems, or levels 3 through 5, which is ADS systems, automated driving systems. And what they need to report is how many incidents happen per month and how many incidents happen per day. And per month, they have to say, okay, did it happen in an accessible road, or was it a test road? And then show what was being engaged at that time. Was within 30 seconds of the crash, was it level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5? So that's the incident reporting for monthly incident. And then within one day, they need to be able to show, okay, was it in a private or public road? What was the level? And importantly, what was the airbag deployment? Was there a pedestrian involved, bicyclist? Did somebody die? And did anyone need to be hospitalized or ambulanced? So these are the things that have to be reported within one day for any crashes that involve levels 2 through 5. Importantly, they say that a business can claim that some of the data is confidential business information. This is the trade secret argument. And they say that if the ADAS or ADS version, that might be confidential business information, and the operational design domain is important. Saying what, so for example, what is Tesla designed to do? Is it designed to be able to be off-roading? If so, whether it was designed to be off-roading or not might be a confidential business information. Therefore, maybe would not be publicly disclosed. And also the narrative description, to the extent that the narrative description gives away trade secrets, they might well also not have to put that in the public domain. So anyway, so there are some clawbacks to be able to say that if it's confidential business information, I as a Tesla or a Waymo might not have to do that. But the purpose of the standing order is saying we need to be able to do an apples to apples comparison across manufacturers to see how safe the Tesla is versus Waymo versus the others. And we have to be able to say what is an unreasonable risk and potential recall if we need to. So this idea of, this is again the airbag, saying, what is we're going to regulate on the back end. Now that we have the reporting data, we're going to be able to say, okay, this is a reasonable risk versus this is an unreasonable risk, and recall as necessary. Of course, that's the federal side. Of course, the state side, the states are not standing still, as you can imagine. Here in gray are the ones that have not yet been able to not yet deployed any regulations, either on the legislation side, executive order side, or both. Of course, if you have green here, you say that's an executive order. The blue have enacted legislation, and the yellow have enacted both. So the first to expressly permit autonomous vehicles, that is levels 2 through 5. First is California for obvious reasons. The second was Nevada because they have wide open roads and they're pretty close to California. The third for obvious reasons is Detroit. Michigan said that we can go ahead and deploy it. Strangely, the number 4 was Florida, but it's not surprising. Of course, there's a vested interest in having the elderly have more mobility in a way that autonomous vehicles can provide. Interesting for the lawyers in this is that in New York, there's a law saying that drivers must have at least one hand on the steering wheel. But what does that mean for a level 3 or level 4 or level 5 vehicle? Can the robot's hand, quote unquote, be on the steering wheel? And if not, does any level 2, 3, 4, 5 violate New York law? Those are interesting questions that I do not think have been litigated thus far. In Minnesota, we have a few bills that have been enacted and one executive order, but as you can see here that the bills have largely died in committee. The one order that's gone forward is the Governor's Advisory Council on Connected and Automated Vehicles. That is it was created in 2018, and this is the listing, the showing of that advisory council. You can see that I'm on that group, and strangely, I have the Minnesota Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, the folks that organized this speech today is the reason I'm on the council, because during the presentation that I gave, I think in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, 2016 or 2017, in the audience was Craig Gustafson, who was the chief counsel of the Minnesota Department of Transportation, attended this very presentation back in 2016 and asked me to be more involved with the governor's work on the advisory council. So because of that presentation 4 years ago or so, 6 years ago, now I'm on the advisory council to be able to help think about the things that matter. And as part of that, I helped lead, along with Frank Doma and Aaron Kahana from the Maslin Law Firm. There's a data privacy and data security subcommittee that thinks about for connected and autonomous vehicles. What is the data privacy implications and the data security implications for that data? A little bit more of my background is after I litigated with Robbins Kaplan for a decade, part of my work was in cybersecurity, where I worked for Strauss Friedberg, a cybersecurity company, to do autonomous vehicles testing. That is, Strauss Friedberg would do penetration tests to try to hack autonomous vehicles and try to do vulnerabilities with those things. So at any rate, so I have a bit of background in both data privacy and data security that informs Frank's and my and Ron Kahana's work on the subcommittee. As part of that group, the goals for that group that we've achieved is that we figure out what data the Department of Transportation needs, that is the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and then after we figure out what we need, figure out privacy principles for that data, and then developing a framework for that data and be able to figure out what the privacy by design and security by design implications and the best practices are, and then be able to figure out how to collaborate best with the private sector and to ensure that the privacy and security of the data happens. You can imagine that there is a big question that you do not want the state of Minnesota knowing that John Smith is en route to John Smith's having an affair with John Smith's mistress. And that's particularly important if John Smith is a legislator. Those are data privacy implications that we do not want implicated. So what does the Department of Transportation need? And then how do we protect that information? And how do we anonymize that data? Most importantly, collection and storage is important. And there's been a lot of discussion in our committee on anonymization. How do you anonymize that it is not John Smith, but it is person 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? That maybe there's an anonymous number that's associated with John Smith. We, as part of this group's work, we had someone from the US Census, that is the Washington, D.C. person that focuses on anonymizing census data to be able to de-identify people. And so there are a lot of good thinkers and a lot of good technologies to be able to anonymize things that we've talked about in that as part of that group. So anyway, so if anyone has any thoughts on either data privacy and data security subcommittee or on the Governor's Advisory Council as a whole, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with constituents and others on ways that we can improve our work. Moving on to Wisconsin, they had a couple of bills that would have done a few things, but they largely did not go through. Most recently, they did actually define what platooning is, and they had provisions for whether a bunch of trucks can be able to go back to back in an autonomous or quasi-autonomous way to be able to go to platoon. North Dakota said that they were having a legislative management study. They also defined platooning. That is, can you go from Fargo through all the way to Montana without having too many human interventions? And having driven this stretch of road, you could almost do that without a level 5 vehicle. South Dakota, there's and by the way, I'm a North Dakota native, so I can say such things about North Dakota, I think. South Dakota had a bill that died in 2014, but they also talked about platooning. So you can see that there's a trend here that a lot of the states are saying, okay, we need to ensure that a truck that is going from North Dakota to South Dakota and then to Minnesota, that platooning is at least defined, and that you can maybe test and operate them there. Of course, the biggest question in a lot of our minds is if somebody gets sued, what will happen? And of course, there's easy answers for 2 of these levels. That is today, if there's no automation, we have decades, almost 100 plus years of case law saying what happens if there's no automation. And of course, with product level 5, of course, if there's no human involved, that's a pretty easy answer. Largely, the product liability laws will apply, as well as manufacturer's negligence will apply. The trickier part, of course, is what happens in the middle. For levels 1 through 4, where you have this handoff between the machine and the human, what laws apply? And that is a bit trickier. And so, of course, as with many things with this, the biggest question is causation. What caused the thing to happen? So frequent questions, you can imagine, that have been litigated and will continue to be litigated as you think about the handoff is, did the human override the computer? That is, did the computer say to do one thing and the human thought that they knew better and they went over it? And then did the computer even alert the human soon enough? Did the alert happen, period? If so, did it happen in enough time for the human to get back? And importantly, did the human override the computer? Waymo released us their public disclosure of Waymo's accidents that happened. I should say collisions, Waymo's collisions that happened with autonomous vehicle level 1 through 5 systems. And they said the most frequent cause of collisions is the human overriding the computer. That is, most of Waymo's crashes happened when the human overrode the computer. So this kind of question is going to certainly come up as more and more cars get deployed. So let's say that the computer did properly alert the human, and the computer and they did alert the human soon enough. The next question is, okay, was the human paying attention to be able to react to that computer alert? And where they may have been paying attention, but was it to a sufficient degree to be able to react in time? Of course, with most levels 2, 3, 4, I as a human need to be alert and constantly scanning. But of course, humans don't do that in the real world. So if you look at the first Tesla fatal accident that happened in Florida, I think this is back in 2017, 2016, what happened was there was a truck that came out here, and the Tesla that was coming from the left saw the white side of the truck and thought that the white side of the truck was the sky. Therefore, it kept going at was estimated to be between 80 and 100 miles an hour, and then ran into the car. So this is an instance where at least this has been disputed, but at least a report early on said that the person may have been watching a Harry Potter movie while this was happening. So if that is true, which again, it's not been confirmed that it is true, but if it were true, of course, this would be an example of the driver not being alert enough for that level 2, 3, 4, whatever that Tesla was in at the time. There is a different NTSB, or this is actually the same NTSB report saying that both the driver and the tech failed in the Tesla crash. And of course, there is a shortly after this crash, Tesla said that they issued a fix to be able to say that to better distinguish a white side of a truck from the sky. So at any rate, so both of them are to blame in this instance. You can imagine that kind of who's to blame question is going to continue. The next is, did the computer see the side of the truck and misinterpret the data? That is another question that goes less to the human negligence, more to the product liability side of it. And of course, this is going to be a large shift. Of course, in the human side, level 0, you of course say, okay, which human between the two made a mistake, if any? Was it this person? Was it this person? Or was it neither of them their faults? And of course, having worked in many jury trials, I worked for Chief Judge Davis at the Minnesota Federal District Court. Of course, there is a attribution of blame, right? Is this person 20% at fault? Is this person 70% at fault? Of course, that's what happens today. And of course, the product liability, once you take the humans fully out of the loop, that is level 5, it goes fully into the product because the human is not even involved. So I think, as we move to our level 4, level 5 features, we're going to see that shift from human negligence questions to product liability questions. So when you think about the product liability questions, you think, okay, did this manufacturer update the Tesla software from 2016 to evolving best practices today in 2022? Right? Those that did they update this thing? That is one of the questions that is certainly going to be asked. And if so, did they push the updates to all the vehicles? Or did they say, I as a user can pull the update? Of course, this push by default versus pull by option, that's a really important question that of course will be litigated as these product liability questions happen. And if the vehicle did push to the owner, did the vehicle owner accept this update? Did the system, permit the owner to reject the update? Is another way to say this. And of course, should that even be a feature, right? Should I, as a manufacturer, permit an owner to reject a safety update, or should the owner not even have a choice in the matter? And should the owner pull the data, or should the manufacturer push the data to the owner? Each of these is a question that I think largely has fallen these days to the manufacturer. That is, the manufacturer is pushing things, much like you don't have to update your Windows operating system these days. The Windows, Microsoft pushes the operating system updates to you. Mac OS pushes the operating system updates to you. iOS gets pushed to you. Android gets pushed to you. It seems like this push paradigm is much, much more common than the owner pulling, especially when literal lives on the line. It's one thing for my Windows machine to crash in the middle of a presentation to the Minnesota Supreme Court. It's another for people to die because my Tesla crashed because of a safety failure. So at any rate, there's a clear trend toward the manufacturers pushing. Having been a plaintiff's lawyer, of course, I want to be able to think, okay, who is going to be liable for these things? And you can think about many potential people that are liable. One is the manufacturer. You could also blame the vehicle owner and sue the vehicle owner. You could also potentially sue the driver that is not the vehicle owner. Of course, you can, if you're a good plaintiff's lawyer, you will name all 3 of these types of people to the lawsuit, and then let the courts shake out which of them is most at fault. One of the law of the newly possible is a professor out of North Carolina that is tracking the legal liability for connected and automotive vehicles, and really focuses on these ideas of quote unquote responsibility is largely legal and civil. And of course, these are all under the parlance of lawyers and judges. So when you think about the defects that can happen from manufacturers, you can say, okay, there's a failure to warn. That is a failure to warn of an unsafe aspect. A failure to warn, you can imagine, of Tesla failing to warn a driver that it might mistake a white side of a truck with the sky, right? So this idea, if Tesla knows about a bug in the system, do they have a duty to warn the users of the system of that bug? You could also imagine, okay, so we talked about Tesla's failure to warn. You can imagine that the owners have a duty to maintain. That is, they have a duty to maintain their systems, to keep their systems up to date, to not disable the updates on that, and to not override the safety features of that. You can imagine that that's maybe easier said than done, especially when, as Waymo says, most of their accidents, crashes are caused by humans overriding the safety features. So a big part of the stance is going to be, do I as a human know better than the machine, or does the machine know better than I do? And of course, in the driving 70 miles an hour, it's hard to tell which is true. Does the machine know more than I do, or do I know more than the machine? Of course, you can imagine improperly using the system. If I'm driving a level 2, 3, 4 car and I'm reading a book when I'm supposed to be paying attention, of course, that is improper use. And if I disable a feature, of course, that could be a big problem. Another question is, can the EULAs, that is the end user license agreements, or the terms of service, those things that we hundreds of times over our lifetimes say, I agree, I agree, I agree, can those limit the liability to the agreement? And that's a big question. And do we as a public policy allow a term of service to override liability for someone dying, for example? It's one thing for me to click agree on my software, and for that agreement to the software to maybe cause monetary damages. Will we allow that same agree for my Tesla that starts up in the morning? My Tesla starts up in the morning. I say, I agree not to sue Tesla for killing me if this happens. And then if Tesla kills me, do we allow that manufacturer to get out of liability through a contractual thing? I would argue that probably the answer is no, but that has not yet been tested in court. Another question is, do owners, if I buy a vehicle that is a level 4 vehicle, do I own that vehicle? That is, do I own both the hardware, the car itself, and do I, quote unquote, own the software? Or do I merely license the software? Do I have a contractual relationship that is not ownership of the software? And the important part about this is that if I do not own the software, but I merely license the software, then that software might remain the property of, say, Waymo, or the manufacturer of Tesla, and maybe even the hardware. An example of that is Google Glass. I owned a Google Glass back in I guess 2012, 2013. And Google did something where if you as a user sold it to someone else, they disabled the hardware. And of course, the whole purpose of Google Glass was to be connected. And so a non-software connected Google Glass was pretty much worthless. And so they essentially, Google through a software update, because I as a user did not own the software, they shut off the software and they essentially made the hardware useless. Query whether that can happen with the vehicles. That is, can Tesla shut off my software to make my car from a level 4 vehicle to a level 0 vehicle, essentially getting rid of what I paid for via that software update, because I merely have a license agreement to use the software. I do not own the software that makes it a level 4 vehicle. So that question of ownership versus licensing is a big question that I've not seen litigated yet, but it's going to be an interesting thing to be able to see. Interestingly, also, is this is a first sale doctrine of copyright come to play. The first sale doctrine is what allows you as a buyer of a book to be able to sell that book to someone else. If I buy a level 4 vehicle, can I sell that level 4 vehicle to someone else? Or can Tesla keep me from selling that level 4 vehicle, thereby inflating the price of that Tesla because there's going to be less supply in the ecosystem and more demand? So anyway, so it's the first sale doctrine apply to the software to enable my level 4 autonomous vehicle. Pinning the tail on another donkey, the data provider. Say I'm a data provider that provides Tesla and Waymo with GPS coordinates. What if I get that wrong and I Tesla drives off a cliff because I gave the wrong GPS coordinates, drive into a lake, it kills people. Those are two kind of ways that you can imagine data providers being sued for such things. Another is, what if there's a wrong legal conclusion? That is, the data provider says this is a one-way, or this is a two-way street, the data provider says, and it turns out it was actually only a one-way street, and they get in a collision. So this idea of the legal conclusion being wrong, or the speed limit being wrong. They say it's a 55 mile an hour zone, but it turns out it was only a 20 mile an hour zone, and then a pedestrian gets run over. So again, the GPS coordinates or the legal conclusions that are built into the systems by the data providers might provide another avenue for people getting sued and liability to ensue. So suing over what? Of course, the tried and true claims are negligence claims. That is, that you can sue for breach of, that there is a duty of care, that someone breached that duty, someone was injured, and that was the cause of the injury. Of course, this is Minnesota law. For in the context of levels 1 through 5 vehicles, you could say, okay, was a wet road foreseeable? Probably. Was the black ice reduction in speed necessary? Is that foreseeable? Probably, especially in Minnesota, and especially 20 below, the hardware failing at 20 below weather is Minnesota's 20 below temps foreseeable especially in a car that is designed in Silicon Valley and tested in Arizona? How much should they also test in Minnesota to ensure that the black ice and 20 below and not being able to see the sides of the road during a whiteout, is that foreseeable or not? And then they think about to what extent should the Teslas and the Waymos of the world be held, to what standard should they be held? So they say better than any other computer, that is with 360-degree vision. Should the machine be able to see through snow that humans would not be able to see through, since they have LiDAR? Should they be able to see through fog that LiDAR can see through, but humans cannot? Should they be able to see in the dark like machines can do, but humans cannot? Again, what is the standard to which we hold the machines? And should we hold them to a higher standard than we hold the humans? Is there strict liability involved? Is there a defect for a Tesla or a Waymo or another vehicle that is unreasonably dangerous by design? That even if you exercise all possible care, and that you would have liability? Open questions that I don't think yet have been litigated. So in full self-driving, that is level 5. Can the user of the vehicle include the person who bought the vehicle, the person who was a passenger in the vehicle? If there's no one in the driver's seat for level 5, if I'm passenger of the vehicle, am I a user of that vehicle? Third parties, if I'm a child of a passenger or an owner, can I sue? And can I make the similar claims for strict liability and product liability than the purchasers of them? That is the person who contractually purchased the Tesla. If I sold it to another person who now owns it, and someone who rides with that person, and then a child, can each of those people, the child, the passenger, and the owner, the new owner, make the same strict liability claims? Is there a manufacturing defect? That is, is it unreasonably dangerous for the intended use? That's a big question as to proximate cause. What caused the accident is going to be the primary question there. Today, the hardware, we talked about the hardware broke. Of course, tomorrow there's going to be a defect in the algorithm. They would say that the algorithm to detect the truck white on the side of it, that was a manufacturing defect. The inability to detect that the side of the white truck was not the sky, that was maybe a manufacturing defect. And of course, there's what if someone does a typo saying that the governing law for this street is not 25 miles an hour, but is instead 255 miles an hour? Then, is that a manufacturing defect? That is a defect in the hardware, or is that a design defect, a defect in the design? This is just some case law that Minnesota has on design defects. Interestingly, you could imagine that what is state-of-the-art changes from today versus tomorrow. You can imagine that yesterday's state-of-the-art system is now today's defective design. So you can imagine those goalposts moving as we go forward. That what is state-of-the-art is continually changing. And what if I bought a Tesla in 2016 and they don't update for 10 years? And so now it's 2026 and I'm using 2016 data. If that does not get updated, is that defective? And what is the burden that Tesla has or Waymo has of pushing that updated algo to an obsolete system? And what if it's unduly expensive? There's a lot of end of life for machines. For example, the phone I'm carrying right now, I bought it just this past year in October. It has an end of life 3 years from last October. So it'd be in October of 2024, this will have an end of life where Google will no longer support this phone. So we have largely said as a society, that's okay, because that is end of life. Can we similarly end of life a Tesla, right? Or a different level 4 vehicle to say, all right, after this many years, you can no longer drive your Tesla or Waymo because it has reached its end of life. It is too expensive to update the software in this Tesla in 2026 for this Tesla you bought in 2016. So again, how much does expense of the manufacturer fall into play when you talk about the expense of updating? All right, security and safety. Of course, in September 2016, a bunch of researchers said, hey, the Tesla seems to be pretty insecure. And then Tesla pushed a fix to it within 10 days. So this demonstrates how the ability of over-the-air updates to quickly remedy things, much like we quickly remedy software. And again, this idea of planned obsolescence in computers and phones, does that also acceptable for me as a manufacturer to brick the vehicle? Essentially say, too bad, so sad, this vehicle doesn't work anymore because it's too old. Or instead, do we as a society say, okay, we need to be able to know that if we buy a car, we can continue using it for a reasonable amount of time, have a classic Tesla, if you will, much like we have classic Model Ts on the road today. So does the manufacturer have a failure to warn? That is, did the manufacturer reasonably foresee that Tesla could be create injury? And did you instruct the user? And did you warn of the inherent dangers? This is all Minnesota law. And of course, importantly, there's a Glorgevin, I think is the way you pronounce it. This is probably the most the most apt case in Minnesota, at least, for autopilot systems. That is, there was an airline autopilot that alleged that the autopilot system failed to warn the pilot of it. And the court in that case, in the Glorvin, said that the written instructions were sufficient, that there was the airplane manufacturer did not have a duty to train the users, the pilots, in the safe use of the product. So the question then, would that fall under the same system for Waymo and for Tesla? The idea is, if you as a user of the system intervene on short notice, what is the short notice here? Is there a cost benefit analysis? What if the user performance improvement is just milliseconds that would not have necessarily avoided that crash? So there's a big question as to whether Glorvigen would apply to autonomous vehicles, or whether we're talking about something totally different. Most importantly, for full level 5, that is ones that do not involve humans or do not need humans, if there's no user interaction, the Glorvigen training example doesn't apply, because you have to be trained to be a pilot, but you don't need to be trained to have a level 5 vehicle. So anyway, so you can have a layperson that is driving this Waymo or this Tesla and not have to have that in there. Knowing that I have 3 minutes, that was my 3-minute warning before we have our end of the presentation, I will fly through the remainder of these slides. So fraudulent misrepresentation, negligent misrepresentation, did Tesla, Waymo, the others say that they would just do something that they can't? Can you say if someone were to say, you can read email and watch movies while driving your car, right? Would that be a fraudulent or negligent misrepresentation? Would you breach the warranty if you said something like, this is as safe as human drivers, right? Would that be statements that would be a breach of warranty? Or would it be puffery? What if the express warranty came from a dealer versus the manufacturer? What if there's an oral statement that accompanies the written statement? And what if the written agreement has a merger clause, right? These are all standard breach of warranty questions that would fall under levels 2 through 5. What is the ordinary purpose of a level 4 vehicle? Is it to drive people around without them paying attention? There are all sorts of questions on breach of implied warranties. Who is the third-party beneficiary of this implied warranty beyond the buyer? Family of a buyer, that's a passenger, a guest, any other person? Can a guest in a car sue under the breach of warranty? All open questions. Can you disclaim the written warranty for autonomous vehicles? Can you have the browse wrap and click wrap to disclaim the contractual the duties under breach of warranties? What if you say, I agree, before you start the car each time? Does that affect things? Or is it unconscionable to say that you can contractually disclaim something that will kill or cause personal injury or death? Even if I'm a passenger and have not signed the EULA, if I'm a passenger and the EULA driver clicked accept, am I bound by that acceptance? Can I sell my car again, much like I can sell my books again? Or is the contractual license to use the software, does that tie to the person? If the manufacturer takes away my software, and then now I'm stuck with a level 0 car, even though I got a level 5 car, can they take away that property from me? Or do I own the car, or do I merely license this level 5 vehicle? Insurance, of course, makes the world go round. So when you think about, is there much like a Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, where Congress created a fund to be able to help vaccines go forward? Might there be a national no-fault, self-driving act, where we'll create a fund to be able to help people that are killed by autonomous vehicles, much like people that are killed by vaccines, to advance vaccine manufacturing and to advance self-driving cars? Maybe might that look a little bit like Minnesota's no-fault laws? Skip over this, and I think we actually have reached the end of my time. So mostly just think about a future where you will someday say to your grandchildren, "I used to drive myself." Of course, those days are not going to happen anytime soon, but you can imagine all of the liability that happens as a result of our brave self-driving future. So with that, thank you so much for your time and attention. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them after. And I think we could probably distribute my email address to be able to answer those questions. Thank you so much.